Welcome back to Thoughts from Underground. Last time, I'd left you digging through the 5 theisms, searching for axioms that refuse to adhere to the territorial map we'd established. Pray tell, what have you found? Sifting dust, I presume? Can't say I'm surprised. It's hard to find something of substance when denying substance exists. By now, you're either beginning to catch on to the implications, or you're misunderstanding the taxonomy entirely. No matter. As we explore these 5 territories in detail, even that precious epistemic humility will lose its footing. Today's excavation runs deep. We're mapping monotheism, the first, and perhaps most, misunderstood terrain on our chart. Let's establish our terms, shall we? Monotheism, at its philosophical core, is a framework for exploring singular, supreme reality. One ultimate principle, one source from which all proceeds. Notice, and this is crucial, I did not say one personal deity. I did not say one conscious being with intention. The error most modern thinkers make is retrofitting medieval personalism onto a category far larger than any one tradition could contain. Monotheism simply asks, is there one ultimate principle? If yes, you occupy monotheistic territory. The shape that principle takes, whether personal or impersonal, conscious or brutally indifferent, matters far less than most assume. This troubles certain atheist heroes of our age. And for good reason. You see, once we remove the requirement for personhood from our definitions of monotheism, something rather inconvenient occurs. A large swath of contemporary materialist atheism's most confident defenders. They land squarely within monotheistic territory. The very framework they reject most forthrightly. Sam Harris, brilliant in many respects, often espousing in more words, or less, there is only what is. A singular, supreme reality, one ultimate principle, the physical universe and its contents, governed by natural law. He may call it materialism. He may call it science. But taxonomically, he's describing monotheism. And here is where the delicious irony rests. He's not wrong to do so. The question isn't whether reality is singular or plural. The question is, what is that singular reality? What comprises it? What are its properties? Consider something the ancients understood quite well. The logos. Not as a person or a conscious being with preferences and petty vengeances, but as principle, as ratio, as the underlying rational structure that makes reality cohere rather than collapse into pure chaos. What if monotheism, stripped of its personal mythology, describes something far colder, far more brutal, a reality not governed by benevolence or divine intention, but rather brute necessity, by laws that admit no exception, by a principle so fundamentally indifferent to human suffering that it cannot be moved by prayer, cannot be swayed by morality, cannot be influenced by desire, cannot be pleaded with by conscience, no matter how hard one meditates. The logos as non-personal yet personally inescapable fact, brutal in its disregard for anyone or anything. this is still monotheism. One ultimate principle, one supreme reality that cannot be escaped. Now here is where the contemporary debate becomes interesting. William Lane Craig, a formidable thinker, whatever one makes of his conclusions, raises a challenge that neither atheist nor theist should dismiss casually. Craig asks, why should we accept one brute fact over another? Why accept the universe as ultimate brute fact rather than God? And Harris, for all his clarity on what exists, struggles with a peculiar problem. He demands, and quite reasonably, that moral values have some foundation. Not merely that they exist as facts we must accept, but that they be justified, explained, grounded in something. Yet in his own framework, where does that grounding exist? If all that is supreme is the physical universe operating according to natural law, if there's no transcendent principle, no ordering intelligence, merely matter and energy, then by what authority do we claim that suffering is wrong, that compassion is right? Harris answers, the only thing we can find to ground morality is within what is. The facts of conscious experience, the capacity to suffer, the nature of human flourishing. Fair enough. But notice what he's done. He's found a principle within the brute fact itself, a principle that orders his morality. Consciousness matters. Suffering matters. This is his foundation. And that, my friends, is still monotheism. One supreme principle, now defined as what maximizes conscious flourishing, from which all moral imperatives flow. That which matters without matter. Let me be very precise here, because this is where confusion typically metastasizes. Monotheism does not require a conscious deity, personal interaction, benevolence or justice, revelation or scripture, prayer or ritual. Monotheism does require one ultimate principle from which all else proceeds or derives that cannot be transcended or escaped. That is, in some fundamental sense, supreme. Harris occupies monotheistic territory, though he calls his ultimate principle physical reality rather than God. Yet of holding the same axioms, but calling the implications by another name. How is this merely not semantic? Craig occupies the same territory. He calls his God rather than physical reality. The difference is not one of presence or absence on the map. The difference is which monotheism, which specific instantiation of singular ultimate reality more adequately explains the full scope of human experience. And that is a legitimate debate, but it is a debate within monotheism, not a debate about whether monotheism itself is true. Here is what cannot be escaped, no matter one's rhetorical skill. There is a reality. That reality operates according to principles. Those principles do not change based on our preference. Find me one instance where reality stopped adhering to its own rules because someone demanded it. Find me one moment the laws of nature bent to accommodate the human wish. Find me one exception, any exception, where what is became something other than what is, because we declared it should be otherwise. You cannot. Because reality is ultimately singular in this. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It simply is. That singularity, that absolute non-negotiable principle-bound nature of existence itself. That is what makes something monotheistic. Not the texture of that reality, not its personality or lack thereof, not whether it speaks or remains eternally silent. Just its supremacy, its singularity, its inescapability. And now I pose the challenge that neither Harris nor his critics adequately address. If your ultimate principle is truly ultimate, by what authority can you demand it be other than it is? If the physical universe is all that exists, and it produces consciousness capable of moral reasoning, then consciousness is a product of the universe, not its judge. Harris attempts to escape this by making consciousness the arbiter of morality within the system. A clever move, but notice, he's acknowledged that consciousness matters more than mere physical fact. He's elevated one aspect of physical reality, subjective experience, above other aspects. He's created a hierarchy within his monotheism. Craig, meanwhile, locates that hierarchy outside of the physical system entirely. A transcendent source that explains both the existence of physical law and the binding nature of moral truth. Different answers, same question, same categorical territory. Here's what both miss, and I'll leave you to contemplate. If you accept that reality is singular and supreme, you are a monotheist. The only remaining question is whether your monotheism is adequate to the full scope of what exists. Does your ultimate principle explain physical law? Does it explain consciousness? Does it explain moral truth? Does it explain meaning? Does it explain why there is something rather than nothing? Each system, Harris's monotheism, Craig's theism, any coherent monotheism, must answer these. Not all answers are equally compelling. Not all systems are equally adequate. But the debate about which monotheism is true is fundamentally different from the delusion that one can escape monotheism entirely. You can deny the map, but denial is not escape. It is simply choosing not to look at where you stand. Next time, we'll explore polytheism, a framework far more honest about the contested nature of reality than most wish to admit. We'll see how even the most sophisticated modern philosophies rediscover the ancient gods under new names. For now, I'll leave you set with this. If you are of a mind akin to Mr. Harris, Hume's problem of induction is your problem of induction. The rules of time-space exist as all that is, was, and will be. And it is unified in that authority and ontological logic. Theism, monos in nature. Until the next excavation, keep digging.